The final days of November 2025 brought an unprecedented catastrophe to Southeast Asia, as relentless monsoon rains and twin cyclones devastated Indonesia, Sri Lanka, southern Thailand, and northern Malaysia. In just a few days, entire communities found themselves submerged, their lives upended by the sheer force of nature. Rivers burst their banks, city streets turned into torrents, and rural landscapes disappeared beneath muddy water. The scale of the disaster was unlike anything the region had seen in decades. Over 1,300 lives have been lost, with hundreds still missing beneath receding floodwaters. Families search desperately for loved ones, clinging to hope as rescue teams comb through debris and stagnant pools. The human toll is staggering, leaving entire communities in mourning. Millions have been displaced, their homes and livelihoods swept away in a matter of hours. Evacuation centers overflow with people seeking shelter, while others camp on rooftops or cling to what little they could save. The sense of loss is everywhere, as families face an uncertain future. The floodwaters have receded in many areas, revealing a landscape of ruin. Homes destroyed, infrastructure crippled, and fields rendered barren. Roads and bridges have been washed away, isolating towns and villages. The destruction stretches as far as the eye can see. For survivors, the end of the rain marks the start of a desperate struggle for basic necessities. Clean water, food, and medical supplies are scarce, and long lines form at relief stations. Exhaustion and uncertainty weigh heavily on everyone. Families crowd into makeshift shelters, farmers mourn lost crops, and children face an uncertain future with schools in ruins. The disruption to daily life is profound, with education and livelihoods put on hold indefinitely. Local authorities are overwhelmed, with many communities still isolated and cut off from aid. Helicopters and boats are the only lifelines for some, as blocked roads and damaged infrastructure hamper relief efforts. The race is on to deliver food, restore lifelines, and prevent a secondary crisis of hunger and disease. Aid workers and volunteers work around the clock, battling exhaustion and logistical challenges to reach those in need. This is not just a story of weather, but of people fighting to survive in the aftermath of disaster. Amid the devastation, stories of resilience and solidarity emerge, as communities come together to rebuild and support one another in the face of overwhelming loss. This disaster was the result of a rare collision of meteorological forces. The annual monsoon arrived with abnormal intensity, saturating the land for days. Then, two powerful cyclones swept through, amplifying the deluge and triggering deadly landslides. In mountainous regions, entire hillsides collapsed, burying villages in seconds. Cyclonic winds drove walls of water inland, while flash floods erased familiar landscapes. The science is clear. The cyclones pulled in moisture-laden monsoon air, dumping record-breaking rainfall. Weather models had warned of such events in a warming world, but the reality has shocked even experts. Rivers became raging torrents, storm surges contaminated farmland, and flood defenses were overwhelmed. What was once a predictable monsoon became a force of destruction, its power multiplied by the cyclones. This was nature's fury, unleashed on a scale the region had never seen. The scale of this disaster cannot be separated from the reality of climate change. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, fueling storms with greater intensity and longer rainfall. Recent data shows record-breaking November rainfall in Indonesia and Sri Lanka, clear signs of a volatile climate. Warmer oceans have turbocharged cyclones, making them stronger and more destructive. This tragedy is a real-world example of what scientists have warned. Storms are becoming wetter and more powerful. Infrastructure built for a different climate is now woefully inadequate. Seawalls and drainage systems are no match for these new extremes. Adaptation and resilience are now essential for survival. Without urgent global action, disasters like this will only become more frequent and severe. Behind the statistics lies a human tragedy of staggering proportions. Over 1,300 are confirmed dead, with hundreds more missing and millions displaced across 4 nations. In Indonesia's Sumatra, more than 700 have died, and 1.2 million have fled their homes. Sri Lanka faces similar devastation, with hundreds dead or missing and 1.7 million affected. Southern Thailand and northern Malaysia have also suffered loss and displacement. Families are torn apart, survivors crowd into shelters, and trauma lingers long after the waters recede. The struggle now is for survival. A safe place to sleep, clean water, and enough food to get through another day. For millions, life has been reduced to the barest essentials. In Aceh, Indonesia, as the floodwaters finally recede, the true scale of devastation comes into focus. The landscape is scarred, homes are ruined, and the people are left to pick up the pieces. Here, every street and every home tells a story of survival, of heartbreak, and of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Alfian, a survivor, remembers the moment the flood hit. He describes it as a sudden, unstoppable wave. There was no warning, no time to save anything, only to run for higher ground. For Alfian and many others, the memory of that night is still vivid, a reminder of how quickly life can change. Isolated by washed-out roads and downed communication lines, entire communities found themselves cut off from the outside world. With no way to call for help, neighbors banded together, sharing what little they had as they waited anxiously for news and assistance. Shops quickly emptied as panic set in. Long lines formed for dwindling supplies, and the uncertainty of when help would arrive only added to the tension. For many, the struggle to find food and clean water became a daily battle. Prices for essentials like rice and chili peppers soared overnight, making survival even harder for those who had already lost everything. The market, once a place of community, became a symbol of hardship and scarcity. Inflation and scarcity forced families to make impossible choices, whether to buy food or save what little money remained for the uncertain days ahead. Every decision carried weight, and every meal was a small victory. Frustration grew as aid was slow to arrive. Promises made on the radio felt distant and hollow compared to the harsh reality on the ground. Each day without help tested the patience and spirit of the survivors. Alfian and his neighbors tried to clean up and rebuild, working side by side to restore some sense of normalcy. But the gap between announced aid and actual help was painfully wide, leaving many to rely on their own strength and the support of their community. The crisis is now defined by scarcity, fear, and a desperate need for outside assistance. Children wait with empty bowls, and parents worry about what tomorrow will bring. Survivors are grateful to be alive, but their patience is wearing thin. In the crowded shelters, hope and exhaustion mingle as families cling to each other, drawing strength from their shared ordeal. The story of Aceh is a stark reminder. Survival depends not just on endurance, but on the speed and reach of relief. The difference between hope and despair can be measured in hours, not days. The world is watching, but for those in Aceh, every moment counts. Help cannot come soon enough, and the need for compassion and action has never been more urgent. Governments and aid groups are racing to deliver life-saving supplies, but the challenges are immense. The urgency is palpable as every second counts in getting aid to those in desperate need. Destroyed roads and bridges make reaching isolated communities a logistical nightmare. The infrastructure damage is so severe that even the most basic transportation becomes a Herculean task. Indonesia has pledged massive shipments of rice and cooking oil, with the Navy transporting supplies by sea. These efforts are crucial, but the scale of the disaster means that even these large shipments may not be enough. International groups like Islamic Relief have sent food, but warn that these are only stopgap measures. The need for sustained aid is clear, as temporary solutions can only go so far. Aid is stretched thin, and many survivors feel abandoned as they ration dwindling food in crowded shelters. The sense of abandonment is palpable, adding to the emotional toll of the disaster. The speed of delivery is as critical as the quantity. Promises of aid tomorrow offer little comfort to the hungry today. Immediate action is essential to prevent further suffering. Local organizations know the terrain, but their resources are pushed to the limit. Their intimate knowledge of the area is invaluable, yet they struggle with the sheer volume of need. The immediate priorities: food, clean water, and shelter to prevent further tragedy. These basic necessities are the first line of defense against further loss of life. Every successful delivery is a small victory in a monumental struggle against hunger and despair. Each act of kindness and each package delivered brings a glimmer of hope to those in dire circumstances. Sri Lanka faces its own catastrophe, with deadly floods and landslides claiming hundreds of lives. Over 1.7 million people are affected, and the government has declared a national emergency. President Dissanayake has appealed for international help, calling this the most challenging disaster in the nation's history. The Sri Lankan Air Force is airlifting stranded residents and delivering supplies to cut-off communities. India and Pakistan have sent aid, bolstering rescue and relief efforts. While waters recede in some areas, landslide risks remain high in the saturated central regions. The focus is shifting from rescue to providing for the displaced. Shelters, food, and water are urgently needed. The recovery will be long and difficult, requiring sustained support from both national and international partners. For Sri Lanka, the struggle is far from over. As the floodwaters recede, new challenges emerge, chief among them, the collapse of supply chains. In Sumatra, key roads and bridges are gone, paralyzing relief efforts and isolating communities. Markets are empty, panic buying has set in, and prices for food and fuel have tripled. For families who lost everything, hyperinflation is a new disaster. The price of chili peppers in Aceh is now an impossible barrier for many. Aid groups warn that if supply lines aren't restored soon, a severe food crisis is inevitable. Emergency crews work around the clock to clear debris and create temporary routes. In the meantime, aid must come by sea, air, or even on foot. The goal: stabilize markets, bring prices down, and reconnect lifelines. Recovery cannot begin until these vital links are restored. Amidst devastation, hope endures. Rescue workers search tirelessly for the missing, and neighbors help each other clear mud and share food. Sri Lankan pilots and Indonesian sailors risk their lives to deliver aid, while international teams rush to help. The spirit of solidarity and resilience is the foundation for recovery. Every reopened road and every food drop is a victory, bringing relief and hope. The challenge ahead is immense. Rebuilding homes, schools, and infrastructure will take years. The speed and effectiveness of aid will determine the fate of millions. This disaster is a warning of our vulnerability to climate change, but also a testament to human compassion. As recovery begins, it is the collective will to help one another that shines brightest. The waters will recede, and with support, these communities will rise again.